She washed the dishes late at night. The boy said, "Daddy, she's still here." The sound of running water was the only thing breaking the silence of the small, dimly lit kitchen. Plates clinked softly in the sink, the faint scent of lemon soap drifting through the air. The clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m. Mark leaned against the hallway doorway, watching quietly. He hadn't expected anyone to still be up, especially not her. Emily, the new live-in nanny, stood at the sink, sleeves rolled up, her hair tied messily in a bun. She wasn't supposed to be working this late. Her day ended at 8, but there she was, washing dishes that weren't even hers. It had been a rough year for Mark. Losing his wife, Claire, had left a hollow silence in the house that no amount of music or laughter could fill. His 7-year-old son, Lucas, had stopped talking for months after the funeral. The boy barely looked anyone in the eye, until Emily came. She wasn't extraordinary in the way people usually mean. She didn't have dazzling beauty or a loud, sparkling personality, but she had a gentleness that seemed to wrap around the walls of the house, like sunlight sneaking into forgotten corners. Mark noticed that whenever she was around, Lucas didn't hide in his room. He'd follow her quietly just to be near her. Sometimes she'd hum while cooking, and Mark would catch Lucas standing in the hallway listening, eyes soft, almost smiling. Tonight, though, Mark had told her to take the evening off. She'd nodded politely, said goodnight, and disappeared into her small room upstairs. So, seeing her now, still awake, still working, stirred something in him. He cleared his throat gently. "You don't have to do that, Emily." She turned, startled, then smiled a little. "I couldn't sleep," she said softly. "I thought I'd finish up these dishes." "Lucas fell asleep after dinner, right?" Mark nodded, out like a light. "You've been a godsend with him, you know that?" She looked down, rinsing a plate. "He's a good kid, just holding too much inside." Her voice trembled slightly, and Mark noticed. There was something in her tone, a weight he hadn't heard before. "You've lost someone too, haven't you?" he asked gently. She froze, then slowly nodded. "My brother, last year. Car accident." Silence hung between them, filled only by the sound of dripping water. "I know how hard it is," Mark said quietly, trying to move on, pretending to be fine. Emily placed the last plate in the rack, her fingers trembling slightly. "Sometimes I think," she whispered, "people like us, we don't heal by forgetting. We heal by helping others remember what love still feels like." Before Mark could respond, a small voice came from the hallway. "Daddy?" Lucas stood there in his dinosaur pajamas, rubbing his eyes. His hair was sticking up on one side. Mark smiled gently. "Hey, buddy." "You should be asleep." The boy blinked, then looked toward the kitchen sink and toward Emily. His face softened. "Daddy," he said quietly, tugging on Mark's sleeve. "She's still here." Something about the way he said it, that innocent, almost relieved tone, hit Mark straight in the chest. He realized. In that moment, Lucas wasn't just talking about Emily being awake. He meant she's still here, as in someone who stays, someone who doesn't leave when things get hard, someone who makes the house feel alive again. Emily smiled faintly and walked over, crouching down to Lucas's level. "Couldn't sleep?" He shook his head. "I had a dream about Mommy, but then I heard you singing downstairs and I wasn't scared anymore." Mark's breath caught. Emily blinked fast, tears welling. She pulled Lucas into a gentle hug. "I'll always be here, okay?" she whispered. "You don't have to be scared." Lucas nodded into her shoulder. When he finally went back to bed, Mark stood there in silence, watching her wipe her eyes. The kitchen light flickered softly, reflecting off the wet dishes. Small, ordinary things, yet they glimmered like something sacred. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For staying." She smiled, tired but warm. "It's what your family does for you," she said simply. And for the first time in a long while, Mark realized, maybe family wasn't just who you were born to. Maybe it was the people who stayed up late washing your dishes when you couldn't find the strength to. As he turned off the kitchen light, he caught one last glimpse of her shadow moving softly by the window. Still there, still giving, still healing. And somewhere upstairs, a little boy slept peacefully, no longer afraid of the dark. The next morning, sunlight poured gently through the kitchen window. catching on the glass cups Emily had washed the night before. The house smelled like coffee and maple syrup, a smell that hadn't filled the air in a long time. Lucas was already at the table, swinging his legs, his plate stacked with pancakes. "Morning, Daddy," he said brightly. Mark froze mid-step. That cheerful voice, it had been months since he'd heard it so full of life. Emily looked up from the stove, surprised but smiling. "Someone's in a good mood today." Lucas nodded eagerly, his mouth full. "You were singing again when I woke up. Mommy used to sing in the mornings, too." Mark glanced at Emily. She looked down, eyes glistening. She hadn't meant for him to hear. It was just something she did, soft and unconscious, like a habit of kindness she couldn't turn off. That morning became a quiet turning point. Over the next few weeks, laughter slowly returned to the house. Lucas began to talk more. About school, about his drawings, about the stars he watched from his bedroom window. He even began setting an extra place at dinner sometimes. "For Mommy," he'd say simply, and instead of sadness, it brought a strange kind of peace. One evening, after putting Lucas to bed, Mark found Emily sitting on the back porch, her sweater wrapped tightly around her shoulders, staring at the night sky. "Beautiful night," he said softly, stepping out beside her. She nodded. "Your backyard's the best spot for stars. Feels quiet here, safe." Mark smiled faintly. "That's because of you. You've brought something back to this place, to us." Emily looked at him, startled. "I didn't do much. Just tried to make things a little easier." "That's exactly what you did," he said, "and it's more than you realize." They sat in silence for a while, listening to crickets and the faint hum of a distant car. Then Emily said quietly, "The night I lost my brother, I promised myself I'd never let someone else's light go out the way his did. He used to tell me, when you can't fix the world, fix one person's world." Mark looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something he hadn't seen in anyone since Claire died. Hope. The next day, Lucas came running into the living room holding a crayon drawing. "Daddy!" "Miss Emily, look." It was a picture of 3 stick figures, a man, a boy, and a woman with a bun in her hair, all holding hands under a big, bright yellow sun. "That's you," he pointed at Mark. "That's me and that's Emily. We're together. Mommy's the sun. She watches from up there." Emily pressed a hand to her mouth, tears instantly spilling over. Mark's throat tightened, his voice barely a whisper. "It's beautiful, buddy." Lucas smiled proudly, then ran off to tape it to the fridge. For a long time, neither adult said a word. They didn't need to. The house, once heavy with loss, now breathed again. Months later, on a snowy December evening, Mark stood by the window, watching Lucas build a lopsided snowman in the yard, while Emily helped him fix its crooked carrot nose. Their laughter drifted up to him like music, and for the first time since Claire's passing, he whispered to himself, "We're okay." He opened the window slightly, letting in the cool air and the sound of joy. Emily looked up from below and waved.
"Hot chocolate coming up?"
she called with a grin. Mark laughed. "You read my mind." She grinned wider. "I always do." He watched her turn back toward Lucas, the snowflakes landing softly in her hair, the warmth in her eyes glowing brighter than the Christmas lights on the porch. That night, after Lucas had fallen asleep by the fireplace, Emily gathered the cups from the table, just like that first night, and began washing them quietly. Mark stood in the doorway again, just watching. This time he didn't stop her. He only stepped forward, picked up a towel, and began drying beside her. Neither said a word. The sound of water and the soft clink of dishes filled the air, ordinary, peaceful, perfect. When their hands brushed over a warm cup, Mark smiled. "You're still here," he said softly. Emily looked at him, eyes shimmering. "I told you, Mark," she whispered. "Some of us were never meant to leave." Outside, snow kept falling, gentle, endless, like a quiet promise that love once found doesn't fade. It simply changes form.